allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, Mr. Trolla,
Here.
Ms. Jason,
Here.
Ms. McDonald. Here. Mr. Leibel.
Here.
Mr. Belanti.
Here.
And I am here. Mr. Feldman is excused tonight. May I have a motion to approve?
Did you give?
Scott.
Oh, Scott, sorry. Mr. Johnson, are you here?
I'm here.
Now can I have a motion to approve roll?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Moving on to the approval of the agenda. Any comments? We'll vote on this next week. Nope. Minutes for the previous meeting? Any comments? Right. Communications. Does anybody have any communications this week? Nope. Unfinished business. We have none. That brings us to the superintendent report.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Sinestri.
Thank you, Mrs. Battaglia. I have a couple of short presentations for the board tonight. I'm just gonna, excuse me for 1 minute. Hang on. And first, we would like to start, we've talked to the board a few times in the past few meetings regarding the course handbook and the review the committee was doing at the high school to research the courses and to also improve course access. So I'd like to invite up Dr. Wilson, Mr. Baker are here to present what the work of the committee is and recommendation to the board.
Is the slide on again?
He's, here.
Got it. All right, so just to give some, good evening, everybody. Only reason why I'm wearing this suit too is to memorialize the Washington University. Work out, but it's okay. It's okay. It was a good story though. It was a good story at least. But now getting back to the task at hand though. The curriculum handbook, as many of you know, it became something that came to our attention. We had students who really wanted to take one class and not have the ability to not drop two classes. And it started off from what we call our AP World class. And then we had an English 10 class, and both of them had to be taken synonymously. So if you dropped one, you had to drop the other one. As I began to look at that as a principal, I didn't really like the way it was actually happening. We had some parents who, they said, I want my child, they could be good in this area and not good in that area, or they like this focal point a little bit better. So initially, I just wanted to go ahead and I said, I just change it. But I asked the questions like, what do we do? How do we go about changing this in our handbook so that our students can get access to classes? I called up Dr. Wilson. She said, we got to put a committee together and let's have at it and let's work together. So we got a committee together. Hunter was actually on our committee too as well. We tried everybody. We just didn't get parents. So we had teachers on our committee, myself, Hunter, we had students and everything else. And so what we did is we started to meet and look at our handbook. We said, what can we do? What are the barriers? What is stopping students from actually gaining access or equity to certain courses? And what started off as just looking at the AP World and then Global 10 helped us to look at several other areas as it relates to English, math, science, and social studies. It ended up being just a great collaboration. You can move on to the next slide, but it ended up being a great collaboration. I sat down with the English department, the math department, the science and social studies. Ty Critelli, who was a counselor, he actually assisted me too as well in other areas, along with Dr. Wilson. And we went through every aspect as it relates to our English, math, and science. We're not done as of yet because it's going to be a continuous process. But some of the things that we've noted in there, it's going to now start giving our students more access to classes, and they won't have those perceived barriers that were there at one point in time. So look at it as a good thing and a great thing for our students going forward. So now I'll just turn it over to Dr. Wilson.
Yeah, on this side, I like to point out this picture. It's a little panther with a big panther, everyone supporting each other. And we see the course handbook is, it's high school, is the last phase for our students in our educational system here in Sweet Home, but it's not the final stage. They go off into the world. And so it's about helping that little panther become that giant, really strong panther there in the picture. You can go to the next slide. So Mr. Baker talked about, the committee that we put together and the work we did. They had already started some of this work because this is a little bit of a timeline of what they do with the course handbook. The departments review for any updates. So early on in the year, they, as a department, the counseling team, the admin team, they work with the departments to just review any updates. Are there any tweaks we want to make, any courses we want to add? We talked about the timeline for that in this last committee meeting and how we need to scale that timeline back. It really should be happening more in the spring so that we get new courses loaded up for the summer and then into the handbook for the next year to go into the following year so that as they're approved, it's really a year and a half out when we're adding new courses. And so in making sure we want to make sure that we're meeting all New York State requirements and we're selecting courses that our students want to take. So going through the course selection process and so on. So the committee then, we brought it to that committee, and on that first slide, you saw some of the feedback that they came up with the lens that they wanted to have in looking at the courses. It was all around equity. How do we make sure that students see themselves sitting in these higher level classes? If I am a student whose family struggles with finances, right? But every time you see an AP course, you see $98, but you don't see that we have all kinds of help that we put in place to support students who need waivers. And so we wanted to tweak that language because if I just read $98 and there's 2 AP classes I want to take, does that deter me from even thinking about talking to an adult about it? So if we pull that off and describe the support, the financial support that we give to students early on in the handbook, we thought that was a better approach. So that's a tweak, a change that you will see. So there was a question about whether new courses. It's really more about the language around taking away barriers. After that, Mr. Baker took all of the feedback that we developed as a team and that lens that we developed back to the departments and met with each one of the departments to say, how do we tweak your department language through this lens? So they had a second phase of reviewing, and then they came back to the committee, and what you have today has gone through that process. So that was a process we took this year. Going forward, we want to make sure this particular committee that's similar to this, that is comprised of different stakeholders, come together. We reconvene them annually to review the handbook and have that connection back to the departments. And we want to consider ideas like course sequencing. For example, if I take this math class this year and I take this class the next year, what does that mean for me a couple years down? Because remember, we have 4 years. And depending on the course you take, it dictates which course you can end in. And do you get to those higher level courses? And a parent understanding that is important because they may say, no, we want to push early on because we want to make sure you can get to that AP math class. And so the committee talked about continuing to every year revise and add and take feedback to continue to remove those barriers. And you see the handbook is linked in there. Any questions?
I do.
Mr. Baker, come on.
I do actually. So I'm looking at the page where it talks about the different fee reductions that are available. Are there any additional programs to help with costs for AP or college level courses, or is it just those fee reductions?
So we currently have those fee reductions, but we also talked about in the future, how do we seek out other ways? So this was, I don't know if you want to talk about that discussion we had just in the last one about.
Scholarships.
Yep.
Well, we did have a discussion about it. We talked about the dollars for scholars, but we don't know. We have to just approach that to them with an idea of, could we have them to give scholarships to students who want to take AP courses so that we're helping them in that way, so that it could be a part of the plan. And it may not be able to, but we're just trying to tap every single door to see what we can do for our students.
Does AP offer any, like, are there any grants that we can apply for?
It's the waiver typically that they offer
That's it,
AP,
yeah.
but they do offer a lot. They give you a waiver for taking different, so the PSAT and the SAT and then the AP classes. You saw there that the dual enroll courses that I believe is ECC. Yeah, ECC, there's no waiver. That's the fee.
Yeah.
So that's something we have to work on with them because
Yeah.
there shouldn't be a fee.
Because that's almost $300.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
So hefty.
Is that
It's about building
something?
those relationships to help them see that we have students who could benefit from some sort of financial support, and the colleges can help with that.
Is that something that if Dollars for Scholars can't help, that maybe Chef could help with?
Yes, and we even talked about, what's the one in, there's a big one, and it's tip of the tongue, it'll come to me in a minute, but yeah. So we definitely were looking at all the different organizations out there in our community that support students across the board. And just, it's about making those connections and building the connections.
Do we know, do we have like an estimate in total what we're looking at fees? Like for just, I mean, how many kids enroll and what are we looking at? Are we saying $10,000 of fees in total across? the
Get that,
district, or
because
what?
we have projections, like we know how many kids have been enrolled each year, and we can get a projection for this year, so we definitely can get that. We can look at how many kids already had the waiver and what's left over. It depends on the focus across the board. There's different ways to tackle it. It's either through community organizations, it could be a district initiative, it could be, focused on one certain level. Like, for example, I've seen there'd be a focus on English because people think that's the foundational one for college. It cuts across all of the different majors. You have to be able to write papers. So,
I
always
just think it
support.
would be
Yeah.
helpful, it's 3,000 is different than 30,000, right? If we're trying to ask for organizations, I mean, one number may be an easy thing for either an individual or an organization to write a check for versus, a much larger amount.
Say yes, say yes.
Say yes. That was.
Say yes.
Yes.
Yes, working at that.
Yeah.
Plus, it'd be good for us to find out see how many students would take an AP course that's not taking it because they see the fee. And I think that's a good part to be able to see that. Are you not taking it because you don't have the finances? And right now, we don't know that. So it's something that we have to look into.
We already had some really great elements to our handbook when you compare our handbook to other districts around us. So really our focus was on like fees, prerequisites. Do we really need so many prerequisites for a student to try out this entry level, but it's still a higher level course? So, like a pre-calculus, what are the prerequisites to get into that course and so on?
I think, just for what it's worth, when I was in school, I mean, taking these classes helped me to eliminate a semester at college. So, I mean, I actually saved money.
That's how I sell it to parents. I give them the amount of semester cost.
You want to know what the
private
cost is?
school
I'll let you know.
and how much it costs to take an AP class and how much they save, and dollar signs, especially if you can get waivers.
Can I just ask, so I don't know if there's anywhere in the handbook this could be upfront. So if I'm a kid wanting to, am I talking close enough? If I'm a kid wanting to try and challenge myself, but gosh, I'm not so good at calculus. Is there going to be support services in place? I think that's important for the kids to know too, right up front, that challenge yourself. And I don't know if that could be in a handbook that you can say, look, we're going to have a support system for you, because if kids haven't tried this to challenge themselves, they might not even know what exists to support them. So I don't know if there's some way we can make sure they're getting that message that if you enroll, we're going to help you out and this is how we're going to support you.
That's a really good point. I mean, gone are the days that a student who goes into AP doesn't need help. Everybody
Needs help.
something.
Exactly.
So
You're over here shaking your head. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you gotta have the help.
Or, related to that, I'd be interested in knowing or understanding what happens if they can't make it through. Because I think as a student, that would be a fear and, in a reason they wouldn't take it. They might say, well, what's the relief valve? What's the off ramp for me if this doesn't work out? Because they may find out
Absolutely.
it works out, but that fear or anxiety may be preventing them from taking that chance. But just knowing that, okay, worst case, I end up in a study hall, or I'm kind of wondering what happens, because this is an addition. They've already accomplished their requirements, right? So these are,
It's in lieu of.
okay.
Depends on the actual subject. So for example, if you're taking AP US History, because this happened in my household where the focal point wasn't on AP US History, that student then would go to US History.
Okay.
From the AP class. I had the same thing happen with my daughter who's now graduated. She started off with NU Calculus. We were concerned about paying the actual fee in itself because she never took the pre-calculus. So she went from Algebra 2 to Calculus and she wanted to take the NU class. And the teacher said, come on in, take it. I think we paid it probably in December when the teacher said she'll be okay. And then we paid it back actually in December. So that's something we have to work out with the college though, so that the money is not always having to be upfront, but they could pay it in January. So we had a different contact last year, but the contact we're working with this year, we just got to keep on renewing that relationship.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying beyond the financial end is just like, if they drop the class, they would then go into the other class, the
Other class. Then there's some people that will challenge that AP class too as well. And they won't take the exam because they saw themselves, so they got access to all the curriculum, and some of them don't take the exam at the very end because they don't feel like they're gonna do well based upon what they went through for the entire year.
And the most important thing is that they actually try the course.
Yes.
That's the research says that the cake itself is sitting in the class. The actual taking the exam and getting the score is the icing, but we want the cake, right? So.
That was my question, is if a kid is in an AP class, do they have to take the exam? So Mr. Baker said no.
They don't have to, but we recommend it. I do say it's recommended that you take the exam since you sit in the course. But some students don't take it. You don't have to.
Is that more of a mid-year decision, or is that I'm going to take this AP course, but I'm not taking the test at the end of it, but I want the AP credit, or I want it to say on my transcript that I took AP US History?
Call it a family decision.
Okay, thank you.
Will this be prepared by the time the kids have to make, because it sounds like you still have a lot of the financial parts of it. Will this be ready for next year? What does your timetable look like?
So what you have in the link is, it's ready to go. And we want to continue, this is a living document is what we were trying to say. It's that it's going to continue to grow. So each year that we're bringing it back, we've actually kind of changed the process that we use for the course handbook to make sure we have that equity lens on what we're doing with the handbook and keeping the focus on how much does it help students and parents understand the course sequencing, because it's designed for them, right?
Right.
So every year we want to continue to add to it. So what you have right now is what they're going to use for next year's courses.
And I just have to ask the question because I need to hear the answer. This way you're doing it by eliminating is no way dumbing down the courses, because we really want to encourage that rigor with kids, and I know you encourage it, but it's not going to affect how rigorous the courses are, correct? And how they.
I don't think it really.
Curriculum never changes. So the
It
curriculum
doesn't affect the
never
curriculum
changes,
at
the
all.
standards, none of that changes. It's just getting access to that class.
More
More so is what I'm thinking. I
Yes.
just,
Yep. We're providing more rigor for more students.
so if kids want to take these courses, since you doesn't sound like you quite have this part worked out, if they want to take the courses for next year, financially is like how?
So we do have, the waivers already exist. So that's already in place. We want to continue to knock down that cost with those connections. So each year we anticipate having more and more connections with folks like, I need to call up the folks over at ECC and
Mhm.
say, hey, can we meet? Kind of a thing.
Good.
Dr. Wilson?
Yeah.
I have a different
Yes.
question, going on a different track, and I know you already gave me the answer, but just for, I just want you to clarify that the course catalog didn't change in the fact that none of the classes have been removed and no classes have been added. That is correct.
That is correct.
Okay. And the other part, I know there's been some off discussions at different times, but our languages, at least in French and German in particular, the number of people that are taking the classes, especially when you get to the upper classes, has been dwindling for the last several years. I do know, and I can't tell you when, but I know that some of our teachers are, at the top of the steps, so they're at least approaching retirement. That the language teachers, I don't know how close they are, but which languages that very few people are taking, and knowing that we have languages that are much more widely spoken in the school district, I guess the question is, when do we start the discussion of what languages we should be teaching instead of, and if the students aren't taking some but are more interested in other languages?
So, yes, this work actually starts with us looking very closely at what's going on at the middle school, because our students start to pick up their language courses and the sequencing in 7th and 8th grade. By the end of 8th grade, they should have their first level done. And so we have folks who have certifications in a couple of different areas. And so we're looking at, as we have people select retirement and transition into retirement, looking at those different certifications and starting to shift students. It really is important that we know some of that a little in advance, because then we make the shift at the middle school and that rolls up to the high school. It is something we were watching this very closely last year, something that's on our radar, that will continue to be on our radar, because you want to make sure you keep the sequence intact all the way through for students. Depending on that timing, we may end up with students who are partly in and then having to work out how we get them through the whole sequencing. And so those are things we're trying to monitor by looking at multiple certifications. As one certification or one subject goes away, we can double up with the other course. That would help that course that has lower enrollment. We're talking about French and German. And then ultimately shifting, we have high numbers in Spanish.
Okay.
And
Thank
maybe
you.
looking at a new one, American Sign Language.
Good.
That would be my first choice, but my understanding is state ed has not approved it yet as a language other than English.
What was that question?
State
I
ed
don't
hasn't
think.
approved.
Yeah, has state ed approved American Sign Language yet? Last I heard, they had not.
I can
It's not
look.
considered a world language, no.
Oh, well, but it is a language that they can get a sequence in for graduation requirements, yes.
Yeah, I would love to see that.
Will help them in
Cool.
college.
Thank you.
I actually was just having a conversation with one of our alums this past weekend who mentioned that they would have taken American Sign Language if they were able to. She's a speech therapist now. So.
Yeah, the numbers are growing in candidates in that area. We have NTID, the School for the Deaf, right down the road at RIT. Easy pickings.
That's where my daughter picked it up, is at RIT. One of her friends went to RIT, and that's exactly where, and
Just throwing it out there, I would also love to see Arabic offered. We have a large Arabic speaking population. I studied it in college and it remains my absolute favorite subject in the world. So would love to see that too.
I just wanted to mention, I know I mentioned things when I went to high school, and it was, some of these practices are probably archaic. We partnered with some of the other high schools for the AP classes because we didn't have enough enrollment. And that was when Zoom didn't even exist. So I just throwing that out there as something, I don't know, I understand it wouldn't be ideal, but if there is a situation where we're worried about a student completing a track where maybe there's an opportunity with one of the other schools that they can continue that on.
That still does happen. There still are partnerships like that. And that is one of the strategies when you have students who need to finish out a sequence and you don't have a person certified in that area, you'll see that strategy be used. You'll see there's a couple of others, but yes, that is an option to team up with districts, other districts.
Okay.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Whistler. Thank you, Mr. Baker. We also wanted to update the board since your support of adding a public relations communication specialist to the district. One of the goals of that position was to, enhance and update and make sure that we're all on the same page when it comes to our brand identity. And we invited Christine Slagle up to talk, and I know Don and I will probably chime in because it's been a passion of ours too, to talk about where we are with our brand identity. Some of the suggestions we have for the board as far as communications, which Christine will show you tonight. And then we want to update our website too, to make sure that it encapsulates our brand as well. So we have some branding updates. I know you've seen some of Christine's work already, but we're pretty blown away by some of the other things that she has in the hopper, and we're excited to show you what's going on tonight. So I will
Thank you so much.
turn it
Thank you
over.
for that intro. So yes, we are very excited about some of the things that we have going on and some of the future plans we have. So I wanted to go through, when I started and even when I was interviewing, it was clear that the priority is, everything through the lens of the strategic plan and DEI. And so, my presentation during my interview was all about how do I help communicate the strategic plan and DEI. And so, as I started, I realized that one of the most important documents that a organization can have is called brand guidelines. And basically what this is something very common for large organizations. It's maybe for us, it'll be like a 20-ish page guideline. And it's something that we share internally, but also externally with partners like print shops and things like that. It really just lays out the basics of our organization, how to correctly use our mission statement, what our exact colors are. So when I'm working with the printers to, print things like the strategic plan and other print media that we have coming up here, that it's all going to be exactly correct. It's going to be Sweet Homes Blue and Sweet Homes Gold. It's not going to be close. It's not going to be, it's going to be that exact brand. And, our logos, our preferred fonts, the look that we are going for with photography and the tone of voice that we use. So these guidelines will cover all of those things, and it's meant to be something that's useful for folks. So, this isn't something that we're really strictly enforcing or anything like that. This is meant to be something that we can share with everybody. So it's a resource. And included in this guide is going to be links to find all of these things that folks need. So there will be links to high quality versions of our logos that need to be used. There will be links to download the preferred fonts. So all of those resources will be readily available. That's something that, as soon as I started, people were asking me, do you have a, high res version of the logo? And, it makes everything easy to put it all in a guide to send out to folks so they can really help us boost the brand. That's what we're looking for, is for everybody to have consistency so that, the stronger, our brand is stronger when everyone is kind of following those things and able to access those things. So go ahead. So another element that we are super excited about is the rebranding of our Your Schools newsletter to a magazine. This is going to look and feel like a magazine. It's going to be high gloss. It's going to be in your hands just like a magazine. I've seen some mock-ups. We've seen a few mock-ups and we were very excited about it. Really this is another element of, encapsulating that brand. So when you look at this, it's Sweet Home, it's visual, it's engaging, and it takes a deep dive into some of the great things that our students are doing, our staff, our community, our alumni. We're going to encompass everything. It's going to cover the entire district. Something that I love about this job and about this district is that there are no shortage of amazing stories. And that makes my job very easy. But one of the things that I love is, thinking about all the different ways that we can communicate those good things going on. And I talked about this in my interview as well. You have to think about how are you getting these stories out and in which ways. So social media is one of the things that we do, but that's not everything. And we know that there are some folks that do not engage with social media and have no interest in doing so. We know that our parents and our students are seeing our district differently than perhaps a taxpayer who doesn't choose to look at our website or our social media. And so one of the great things about this magazine is that it's going to go to every district resident. I can see that question formulating. So I think that is super important. It's worth the investment because, I think about my own experience before I came here living in the Jamestown district. I didn't really engage with what was going on in the district unless I received something in the mail, and then I took notice. And I think that this is going to be a way for us to share these stories, tell our story, and the more we tell our story, the more that brand is really just enhanced and shared with everybody. Go ahead. Mike mentioned the website redesign as well. So, quickly to kind of give you a little background on this. So our current platform is Blackboard. They were purchased by a new company called Finalsite. And so we are actually required to redesign our website because the template that we use is no longer going to be available when that switch happens. But the great thing about this is that they have told us, Finalsite has told us that basically that switchover is going to be free. So we are going to get a brand new high quality template that is customizable, and we're able to do. Thank you, Don.
Surprise, sound back on.
So we're able to really boost and enhance, and this is the perfect time for us to do that, to align to our brand, to refresh, to really make all of the pieces of our communication align and look the same. So we have a little bit of a sample here. Now, I want to caution you that this is just a complete sample from the company. But if you scroll down, you'll see there's all these elements to what we can do. So all of these elements are customizable. They're all able to be changed. So we can look, they have a whole pages and pages of templates we can choose from. And then we can take any of those elements, move them around, change them. Everything is going to be branded Sweet Home. We can upload our fonts. We can upload our exact colors. We can upload our logo. So everything is custom to us. And we're super excited to make this, a part of what we're doing in terms of branding, because it's especially when we talk about enrollment and prospective employees and things like that. The website is really the first place you go. It's the first thing you see, and we want that to make a really good impression.
How does it work with being an app or on a device? Because currently we're struggling there.
Yes. We've definitely had those conversations with the company, and I've said that, what we have is not adequate. It's not what we want. So that's absolutely going to be a part of this. They have assured us that, the functionality of the app is incredibly important because they understand and they've seen the data that's how most people access our website. And it's true. So that's absolutely going to be a part of how we plan. And we're going to make sure that that is accessible and easy to use. And we're going to test that along the way and make sure that's a huge element of it. So that's a great question. So our goal with this is to launch it at the beginning of next school year. Usually they say, give yourself about 6 months for a website redesign. So, we're right on track to start doing that. So we're going to dive right in. All of what we do is BOCES aidable because Blackboard, which is now Finalsite, is through BOCES. So we have BOCES technical support with that. And like I said, everything is kind of included with that switchover. So we did explore other options as well, just to make sure that we were going with the best of the best and we were going to make it look great. We did land on this company. So we're excited to get started. And a little bit more about what we're looking to do in the future. So right now I'm working on meeting with HR to come up with some new solutions for recruitment. We know that we're coming into hiring season here sooner rather than later. And so we want to make sure that we're kind of thinking outside the box and making sure that we get the word out there. So I'm working with them to think outside the box on that. I'm collaborating with the Student ACT team on a campaign to increase student involvement and awareness. We're working on some pretty cool things with the students. We have some meetings coming up to kind of brainstorm with them and see how, to get their thoughts on how they can engage their peers to get more involved. Because, the work that DEI has done so far is wonderful, but we want to spread the word, right? So we want to get it out there. So we're working on that. Earlier this year, I collaborated with the high school media classes to design next year's calendar. So we kind of have to have a little panel to talk about which ones we're going to choose. So that'll be fun. It's really cool that we have continued to use our students' talent to design the calendar. And, I'm just always always trying to get out there in classrooms and events and things like that to highlight what we have going on. And I am very excited to say that we are going to launch a podcast. So this has also been a worm in my brain since I interviewed. I want to talk to students and I want to have other adults talk to students. This isn't going to be the me show, but I'm excited to talk to students about what they're working on, what they're excited about, and really just having a conversation with them. So, this is going to be students of all ages. It could be any project they're working on, anything they're excited about. I'm very thankful that Mr. Treiloff met with me recently because I wanted to get his thoughts on, what are some things that you think are going on specifically in the high school that we could chat with students about. And this really anchors back to our strategic plan. We talk about elevating student voice. We talk about making them feel as though they are heard and giving them experiential learning. I think something like this is kind of a fun way to do those things. And so we're working on some of the details of that, but I'm excited to have those conversations with students and just let them tell us what it's like to be a student. So any questions?
Got a couple.
Yeah.
First, I wrote down, she is everywhere. Like every event, we were down at the state convention, all of a sudden we turned around, Brian and I, and you're there taking pictures at your.
Yep.
I mean, you're just everywhere. I don't know how you're doing it, but thank you because you're everywhere.
Thank you.
And I
for saying
really like the idea of getting this to every community member because we're going to be starting talking about our buildings. And I think it's
Yes.
important that the entire community knows why we're doing this. I
Sure.
think this will be a great platform to get our message out. So I think that's a great
Yeah.
idea. My last question is cost. Is there any additional
Sure.
cost to everything you're doing?
Right. Do you?
You want to handle that one or should I?
You
We're
go.
ready. We're ready.
I have expensive taste, but no, go ahead, Don.
So the current newsletter is we bid it every year.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So I've instructed Christine to kind of work with our current vendor that is on the bid. The bid package that we've done, if you remember correctly, the previous guy that did this before, we did or tried to do at least 5 newsletters every year. Okay. In this methodology, in this plan, we're looking to probably decrease that down to about 3. So for us, for apples to apples, 16-page newsletter, Christine got a quote. It was roughly about $3,200 to print. A 16-page newsletter on the current bid is probably about $2,500. So for $2,000 or $3,000 in the grand scheme of things to raise our brand,
Yes.
and to give us a new and fresh look. I'll be the first to admit, I really appreciate Christine's ideas and thought processes here, because we never got there, for whatever reason. And I think that
You
this
had a
gives
few
us.
other things going on.
Well, I mean, it's fine. That's fine. I think that this gives us a new and fresh look. And honestly, I think it's something that will be a page turner.
Good.
I really believe that. I really believe that.
Thank you. I very much appreciate Mr. Feldman's, tutelage here and the history of what we've done and what we can do. And, from day one, he's been so supportive of me and not at all, worried about the fact that I kind of took his job.
Only one of them.
So I just appreciate that. He's a fantastic partner and sounding board and as well as Dr. Genestri. So it's fun for us to have these meetings and brainstorm. And, I think usually when I bring something to the table, it's a welcome relief from some sort of other stress you've got going on. So, hey, do you want to look at some cool stuff?
It's a fun meeting. It really is. And, when Christine came on board and we said we really need to develop our brand identity, you see it everywhere, I hope, and you're going to see it on our big communications now too. Even our new template for superintendent reports, it was designed by Christine, and we're using it across the district. So there's a lot going on, and it's just been, whenever she presents, it's been kind of knock your socks off stuff. So we're excited, and we have a great logo, and we have a great color scheme, and we have a great school nickname, and
One community.
And one
it's all-
community.
Yes, yes.
and I joke because we saw the old newsletter. No offense to Don, and with the
Poor
newsletter,
Don.
and when you
This
see
Don guy you're talking about.
when you see Ready for the Future, it was not the old newsletter. Let's just put it that way.
No, right. And
Yeah.
I wholeheartedly agree. And I think that when, I'm perfectly honest with you. I think that when this newsletter, the old newsletter hit the tables, like people might have looked at it, but I think this one is a must look at
I
now.
like it.
And I think it'll be a welcome addition. Mary Ann, just to further on the point about the cost piece of it, when we go forward now, we'll bid it out this way so that we'll continue down this road. But this, along with the work that, I'm excited about this, but I'm more of a tech guy. I'm really excited about the stuff that's going to happen with the website. I think that, we've kind of muddled along, and with Christine on it full time, it's also going to be, that's the first thing people look at with our district, and that's going to set the tone. I really believe it.
Yeah. And I've been encouraged by the customization through the website process. I haven't officially gotten started yet, but we did a lot of work up front to make sure that we were choosing the right vendor that would let us customize to the point where we know that our website is going to look like us. It's not going to look like every other school around us, because of course we always have that, friendly competition of like because everyone else in BOCES around here who has Blackboard is going to go through this same transition. But I'm confident that through the customization and the branding that we already have, the strong brand that we're working on, that we're going to be able to make it look really sharp. So that's definitely at the forefront of our mind. And I know that as we move forward to work on the website, we're going to have those conversations over and over. How do we really amp this up? So.
And just one last shout out. I just had a conversation 2 hours ago with a parent who has the strategic plan, printed out, keeps it in his car so that he can, flip through it when he has a free minute. And he actually mentioned the quality of the printing was so great because you can see that it's very well loved, but it's still in perfect condition. It was a wonderful story. And it's really a testament to the work that you do and the work that you've been doing as well, that when you say it's a page turner, I have actually heard a lot of comments about the quality of the page, like the paper of the strategic plan. So I think this going out to the whole community actually will really wow a lot of people.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a great story. And I think, with something like this, sometimes less is more. And if we put out 3 really high quality, really amazing magazines, people aren't going to say, I wish they put out 6. They're going to say, wow, look at this, So I think we can have even more impact with less. So that's how we can keep the cost relatively the same. Is by making an impact with less is more. So I appreciate that. And I'm excited about what's to come. And, you know, it really, like I said, you know, I have always felt like when we think about how do we get across what Sweet Home is, who we are at Sweet Home, because again, we're surrounded by many other districts, right? So how do we tell our story? That's exactly it. We let the district tell its own story. You know, we elevate things and we curate things and we choose things and we choose what stories to highlight. But all these good things are happening in the district. I don't have to manufacture a thing. Like I have more, you know, I have had to curate what's going in this. I've had to make some tough decisions about what am I going to put in and what am I not. But the good news about that is that we have many other ways to tell those stories. So.
I'll also mention, I noticed on the social media posts, I know we had a conversation because I think it's important. We recognize, like, you know, you're doing the work and I would imagine sometimes wonder, does anybody notice a difference from, and I can tell you, I notice a difference and I know that parents notice a difference because, you know, the pictures say, you know, they were doing it over at Willow Ridge, a warm hearts and you know, you can just tell the quality in what's being posted and the way it's done. And, you know, those pictures are the lighting and the vibrancy behind it, or portrait mode and all the various things that I wouldn't know how to do, but you can, you know, they kind of pop on a social media page. And I think they're, you know, the parents appreciate it, especially if your kids are in it.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, luckily you hired somebody with a photography degree, so that's why. But I do want to say thank you for, you know, bringing this position to life and allowing me to be a part of it, because this thought crosses my mind almost every day. I have the coolest job in the district. So, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for all of it.
And just a few quick updates then for the board. We are moving forward with our plans, rapidly moving forward now on computer-based testing. There have been internal meetings going on since the summer with our tech department, with our instructional technology folks, with our tech coaches, with Dr. Wilson and Ms. Kozakowski leading the way in those meetings. And it's really been a collaborative effort to make sure that our hardware, software, our teacher input, logistics, all are taken into account. We're going to be encouraging our community, but we're going to be doing a simulation on January 24th in the district to make sure we feel like we're in a really good spot right now, but we want to work out any bugs during that simulation that we may have. So our teachers are focused on test administration and not technology those days when they come up in March and April. We've also had BOCES on board throughout the planning stages to test our systems, to look at our capacity, to make sure that we have everything in place. So it's a really smooth test-taking facilitation. Students will be taking them on their iPads come this spring, and we're excited to kind of catch up on the curve on this one. We really need to make this transition now. So it's been a total team effort, and I don't know, Dr. Wilson, if you want to make a comment, but we're excited to get this going.
And Don Feltman and his team has been instrumental in this work. We started with on the instructional side of using devices for testing, like, for example, using the different elements of being prepared for a math test on a device. We started that work last year and then expanded it and really just went into full speed ahead going into the start of this year. So all grade levels that will test New York State 3 through 8 in ELA and math, and then in science will take the computer-based test this year, which for us, it's a big shift, but I think we've been doing a lot of professional development on it. So, but Don and his team has been instrumental in helping to get that work ready.
And with all these people taking the test at one time, we're confident our systems can handle it.
So we've done, to Mike's last bullet point there, we've had BOCES in, there's a a checklist that, it's an app, it's called a Questar app that they do testing on. There's kind of a get ready checklist, and there's a network performance tool that we can do, and we passed that network performance tool with flying colors. BOCES was in on Friday. They did an audit of our wireless network separate from that test, and said that our network capabilities will handle the testing. There's actually, I think, Ms. Dr. Wilson, there's probably 3 different days that they're
Yeah,
gonna do.
it's a window of test. So the window is much bigger when you do computer-based testing, because the testing usually happens over a series of days. This happens over multiple weeks. So we're not testing multiple schools at the same time. The middle school will test on its own. Nobody else will be testing in the district because of their size, and 2 elementary schools at a time will test.
I have confidence in our system that's been tested. Is there a paper backup or is there no paper backup? 0. Okay, so it better
We
work.
are committed to computer-based testing.
Gotta work.
So what I'll say though too is when we do these simulation tests, as well as the day of the actual test, our plan is there'll be tech coaches in each building, 2 technicians with the tech coaches, so that, again, to Dr. Ginestri's point, that it's about, for the teacher, it's about delivering the test and not about
Not the
technology
computer.
issues. So we're hammering away on it. All the kids have the app. They've tested the app. There's a handful of kids that iPads that aren't talking to our management system, that we're working on those individually, but the first simulation will be ready to roll. We'll use it as a learning tool, but I'm very confident as to where we are.
When all these people are taking the test, it won't decrease for the people who aren't taking the test. It won't lessen.
No, there's in every classroom now, we've upgraded our wireless access points. There's a wireless access point in every classroom, so connectivity should not be an issue.
Thank you.
Just a couple quick questions. One is the test the same? Would it have been the same test if it were on paper?
Yes, it's measuring the same standards, and it's the same questions.
Okay. Is the test though, like, I know a lot of these computer tests are now adaptive, meaning if you get a question right, the next question is harder and it's harder and it's harder. And the reason I ask this is because I think students have anxiety then, especially if it's, this is the first time they're taking it and they come out of there and they're feeling like really upset about it, which probably actually means they did well because it was a very difficult
Adaptive.
test. And in conjunction with this question is, are the students prepared? Do they take tests otherwise? And as a district, are we going to hear next year, well, our scores were 3% lower because it was the first time on the computer? I'm just wondering if there's an impact of any of this.
So our students have been using their iPads in multiple ways. As I float around the district, I see even the little second graders cutting and pasting elements, typing up essays. We have built in a lot of opportunities for professional development to get teachers that chance to build lessons around engaging in computer-based testing style questions. And so our kids have had multiple ways in which they've engaged. We've continued to troubleshoot throughout this process. Should we add styluses and if we do, we have to make sure the kids have time to practice with them. So there's multiple ways we're looking to support our students being comfortable with the test. It is not an adaptive test, though. The one you referred to is the questions change depending on if you get right or wrong. Some of our screeners, our academic screeners are set up to be like that, but the state test is not. It is strictly the state test.
Okay. And the last piece is just on from the technology point of view, is just making sure the iPads are charged.
We have a plan
Because it's
for
like
that.
Everything,
part of it.
everything can be right,
Yeah.
and then you realize a third of our kids come in with
Yeah, uncharged.
uncharged iPads.
So to that point, Mr. Liable, we are sending, Toya and her team have worked on communications with the building principals that will send out reminders pretty much every day or so leading up to the test. But we'll also have on deck in each building. We'll have a stack of loaner iPads that will be fully charged so that if little Donnie Feldman walks in and he didn't charge his iPad, although I've never been little, if I didn't charge my iPad, my teacher can swap it out. We'll throw my iPad on charge and I won't miss a beat.
There are also communications going home to strongly encourage checking to make sure the iPad is charged, but we've got backups in place.
And I know they've already started thinking about the questions, at least for ELA, because my daughter was chosen to be one of the people to help write the questions.
Yeah, there are samplers in each one of the subjects that the teachers have been using, and then there's different platforms that are designed to pull similar like questions for everyone to practice on for ELA, math, and science. The simulation is going to be focused on math, but the teachers have available throughout the 2-week process that the simulation is going on, they have available the other subjects that they can also try out.
So this is a simulation. Is there also going to be an actual test being given in this year as well, or does that start? So what's the time between the simulation and when the test, in March usually?
Yep, so end of March, April, going into May, depending on the science test. So it's still about the same time frame, but the window is larger.
Any other questions? Okay. We have our focus groups scheduled for our next capital project. As you know, we did the thought exchange throughout the fall. And now we have that data collected. It's time to put the focus groups together. So the middle school, high school will go on January 17th, and our elementary students will go on the 30th. Parents are scheduled for the 24th, administrators on the 10th, and teachers and staff on the 24th as well. So we will be gathering their input through that time on what they want out of our facilities and using the data we collected through the thought exchange, then to facilitate those focus groups. And thank Dr. Wilson and BOCES, Jessica Cargis, for helping us out with those talks.
How are
Ask how many, oh, I'm sorry.
How are the focus groups selected?
By principals at the students, and then we are working with our PTOs and PTAs for parents.
I was going to ask, how many parents do we have on this?
I don't know if we have any yet. We have one so far. We'll get more.
Yeah.
Yes, and administrators, I think all of them are required to be there. And then teachers and staff, we've asked for volunteers.
You know, we constantly hear from parents, you know, why don't they have a parent voice on this or that? So this is their opportunity to step up and be on something that's really going to make a difference.
And I did have a couple parents email me that we did reach out to. We're just waiting to hear back that they wanted to be part of this as well.
So should we just forward, like if I were to bring this back to the PTA, just forward interested parents to you? Okay.
Can we, I have my PTA tomorrow.
Please do.
Okay.
Please tell your PTAs. And then finally, I think this is it. The chef meat raffle, I have to do a shout out for. It's their first meat raffle, I believe. It'll be February 10th at 6 p.m. The doors will open. The spins will start at 7. If you have not been to a meat raffle, they are a lot of fun. I'd highly encourage you to go. And of course, all the money goes to Chef, which does so many great things for the students of our district and our families. So your support is highly encouraged, but we're getting it out there with all of our communications as well. And that's what I have for tonight. If there's any questions. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
All right. So upcoming events, we have PTA meetings. The 15th, there's no school for Dr. Martin Luther King Day. And I can't believe Regents exams are already.
Yes, we're at the halfway point.
I know, it's kind of crazy. All right, that brings us to open session. Does anybody want to speak before I read my whole thing? No? Okay, great. Perfect. That brings us to new business, special ed.
I went through, there were 71 pages, and I still want, every time we'll reiterate how in awe I am of our staff, our special ed team that does such a great job with our kids.
That they do. On to our monthly financials. Our first and second reading of policies.
I do have some questions in some of the policies. On policy 7580, that was the suicide, dealt with the suicide. They mentioned a time frame for the 3-digit hotline. What kind of time frame? It really wasn't specific. What are we talking about? Yeah, it mentioned a timeline that they talked about for a 3-digit hotline, and I just wanted to know. And if you don't have that information now, that's fine.
So the policy is, but this is a proposed policy that comes out of policy services. So they're linking it to the suicide prevention lifeline.
Correct.
Embedded in the policy.
Okay.
We can use we can use the reference to the hotline, whether we adopt a policy.
Or not. That was, okay. That's what I wondered. On page 37, they talked about the sports and athletics. They crossed out appropriate medical professional should diagnose and treat an athletic injury. And I wondered why that was crossed out. It's page 37.
Which policy number is that?
Athletics.
Is it 7420?
I think there's 7420 and then there's 7512 student physicals.
I should have written the actual policies down, sorry.
Still want to read it. It's the,
Yes,
I
it is.
believe that policy, and I don't have it in front of me, but I know when we talked about this, it was just more of a language change to have specific, our medical
Director.
director be
Handle it
handling it
versus,
as far as our sign off goes.
okay, right. So it was more
That was
about,
on the physicals, I know
right,
that for
it was
sure.
more about the medical professionals that are included in that policy
okay,
and singling it down to just the,
okay. I just wanted a clear understanding. Thank you. And on page 46, where it talks about the examination by health appraisal, they crossed out sickle cell. Why was that crossed out? I was just curious as to why that was singled out. It's, I believe, page 46.
Sherry said because we've never screened for that.
We haven't ever, but, that's always like nails on a chalkboard, never because we haven't done it before, is, sickle cell normally hits our, African-American population. So again, looking through equity and all that, is that something, just because we've never done it before doesn't mean, I just wondered what the rationale for taking that out was. And if you don't know now, that's fine.
Yeah,
You can
that
get
might have
back
been their
with me.
recommendation, not
Right.
ours, but I don't remember talking about
sickle cell.
striking that.
Sickle cell, yeah.
That
it
might have
was-
been that might have been the BOCES recommendation.
Okay,
I don't see that in the BOCES record.
Okay.
But
That came from Nurse Bear.
have tests for.
okay,
Yep.
okay. Okay, so that's why it's, okay, thank you.
I had a question just for clarification. I'm not sure if they went out again. For the policy, I just had it. I think it's 7580. This is about suicide. This policy was put on hold. I was wondering if you could just tell us a little bit about the discussion and also what we currently have in place for those situations.
Sure, so 7580 is a proposed policy from Erie One. It's not a required policy. So oftentimes when we review policy, we obviously and clearly have to adopt policy that's required by the Board of Education. The suicide the recommended policy is not a required policy. So the question is whether it's necessary to put it in board policy or to make sure, to continue doing what we've always done in terms of supporting students with needs, mental health needs. I think the board, and I defer to the board, wanted to have a conversation about it, whether or not to adopt a non-required policy. But to the extent of, you know, what our staff does do, we have any number of supports and resources available for students in need, including, you know, our counselors are trained in doing lethality assessments, and if they feel they need to be transported to a care unit, we've done that. We, our Gaggle system, our content filtering application does filter for concerns that students might express. It does also offer a portal for students to reach out and ask for help. And we have had situations where students have reached out for help, and we've responded 24/7 through law enforcement helping us with welfare checks in the middle of the night if needed. And our administrators and counselors providing supports as needed. We do that always and have always done that without policy. So I guess the question is whether it needs to be memorialized in board policy, or which isn't required, or to continue our efforts have been doing.
We felt we had the systems in place that were addressed in the policy. And I don't want to speak for Scott or Brian, but that was what we talked about at the table.
Yeah, and I think we had a thorough discussion on this policy, and we sent it out subsequently to the board as a discussion item that you know, we knew that there may be some interest in either including it or not including it. But I think ultimately, when we look at the policy manual, or you know, they're fairly lengthy. And so I think is a general philosophy that to avoid redundancy if we don't need it, and also, you know, to really focus on what's required. And then the last piece is, which is most important, is that our understanding was everything was covered in other policies. And, but, you know, under sensitivity to this, we wanted to make sure that, you know, I think it's worthwhile that, you know, we're addressing it and discussing it.
Yeah. And if I can jump in here too, it's when we talked about it, one of the first questions we asked was, do we have that crisis intervention team? Which we do, something that's important to us. And as they've already said, I'll just reiterate, I didn't like the idea of putting another policy in that's not a requirement, especially since we're already doing the work. But on the other hand, normally we're, you know, as a committee, we're recommending something, but in this case, I didn't feel comfortable that it was just Brian and I absolutely speaking for the board with a policy that you would never see. Because if we didn't recommend it, it wouldn't have come there. So that's why I thought it should at least come forward. I still don't think we need to add it to the policy manual, but I wanted to make sure that the rest of the board had their opportunity to kick their 2 cents into this. And the other thing is, I hate the title, just calling it suicide. It should be suicide prevention at the very least.
So are you saying this is like just a duplication of services, basically, if we?
Well, as you know, in general, our policies are rooted in law and regulation.
Right.
There's underlying laws or regulations. Through the state education department, they've issued regulations we're, you know, expected to support through board policy. And there are no laws or regulations or commission regulations attached to this topic. So it's not something that's required to be in board policy. It's clearly required of us to support our students. And the reference to the curriculum, you know, the curriculum piece of it is embedded.
Yeah.
So it's wouldn't be something necessary to be in board policy, but we also discussed the sensitive nature of it and, you know, highlighting the issue.
Is there any benefit, like anything that putting it in the policy manual gives us that would be a pro? Like this is something that we gain by having this in our policy manual?
With or without the policy, we continue to do the work. We continue to add layers to this. This is all about our mental health awareness and focus throughout the district. For example, we received a grant last year, TIG, that's trauma, illness, and grief. And we had teams across the district who had training in that to support all the schools. So there's multiple ways in which Ms. Bailey's already mentioned, but It's embedded throughout our curriculum. It's embedded throughout our MTSS planning and programming, mental health screeners that we're looking at to implement across the entire district. We continue to grow in this, and that would continue no matter what.
I'm not actually invested in getting it in the policy manual. I just want to make sure that our community
talked
knows we're
about it.
not leaving any stone unturned.
And I will say in these meetings, not only on this topic, but on other topics, myself and Scott, and as representatives of the board, have always asked the question, not just is this legally required, but is it the right thing to do? Are we doing these things, like if we weren't doing some of these things, I think we would probably feel differently that we need to make sure these are included then. But, our understanding that they're already being done. But I can say that philosophy, it applies to all the, policies and issues when we're examining them, because there are ones that come up where they're optional, I guess, or they're kind of, here's an optional policy, and it's like, well, we're doing it already, or what are the real merits behind it? So, it's always about doing the right thing, not just meeting the minimum
Doing what we
standard.
have to do.
Yeah.
My concern would be more so, is it redundant in the other policies, or does it need to be specifically spelled out so it doesn't ever fall by the wayside? Would be my concern, is that, we're already doing all of these things, but do we need to put it in writing and say, yes, this is a thing that we now as a board require? If it's already there, to me, it's a redundant policy. That's my personal take on it, but
I'm just saying it's already there.
Many elements of it throughout other policies and in the work that we do.
Is there anything you feel we're missing that could take us to another level?
Well, I mean, not written into that policy. We continue to assess. We were just in our teaching and learning subcommittee group talking about constantly looking at what our students need and their growing needs. And so we have to continue to look at what we add, how we adjust. So that will always be a part of our
And
work.
I would say I'm sorry, but as, school administrators, I think there's no more of a sensitive topic for us than this. And having all of us at this table involved in these situations, whether it's gaggle or whether it's the 2 a.m. call, I'm very confident in our policy procedures of what we're doing to address it, but the all hands on deck team approach has been has worked for us and I think that's really the best way to approach it, because it's such a sensitive topic that everybody's vested in this district on making sure that all of our kids are taken care of.
It is, and it's a sensitive issue, and Scott and I have gotten that call.
Yep.
And it's
the worst.
It's the worst call we've probably ever taken,
Yep.
yes.
So
Let
between
me
the
throw
curriculum.
I'm sorry, I
Oh,
just want to
sorry,
throw
Scott.
one more thought. Each of the policies like this, we review it, so every one of those is to ship it back to us again next year too. If for some reason, and those will have the chance to look at it again. The governor's speech today about what she's envisioning the budget in the coming year, she talked quite a bit about mental health in particular in schools. So I suspect that we'll see some new stuff coming down from her, which may or may not change how we address this. So that's, in my mind, I'd like to see what comes down from Albany and from state ed. And then if need be, next year when it comes back around, then we can look at it again. It's kind of my feeling.
All right, anything else on policies? Okay, disposal of obsolete property, it's some commissary equipment. and some
Dishwasher
buses.
and ovens, and they're not, I see, like, these are old and probably not working. Are we actually using those, or have we stopped using them and it's just time? I mean,
Using what?
I know dishwasher and ovens were some of the
Correct. They just
disposable
reached
things.
the end of their useful life, yes.
Okay, so do we need to replace those?
They
or-
are being replaced.
They are, okay.
Some of them were replaced in the capital project.
Just and quick, I know I dropped a message to Don already about the buses because they struck me a little funny that a 3-year-old bus with hardly any miles on it. So Don, could you explain what you explained to me?
Sure. So the buses, we took these buses, the two in question, 378 and 379. We took them in our possession in 2020. They're model 2021 buses. Forever, we went with from an engine standpoint, we went with Cummins engines. For whatever reason, at that point in time, we went with a Detroit engine-based bus. And those two buses are essentially sister buses. They have had a tremendous amount of issues. The one bus, 378, has spent more time in the service bay and back at Matthews Buses than it has on the road. So each of those buses, the warranty on the buses, it hasn't cost us anything. The warranty on those buses was set to expire or is set to expire. So we felt it best that before those warranties were to expire and the services on the buses would cost us more, we felt it best to look at alternative solutions to it. And Matthews Buses has offered us a trade-in value for each of the buses. They're going to give us $70,000 for each of the two buses, a total of $140,000 that we will apply to bus purchases that are due to come to us in the spring.
Is the Thomases the one where have a relationship as far as electric buses? Which one?
It's not, it's Matthews. Bus.
Matthews, okay.
Matthews Bus. That's where we buy our buses from traditionally. Mr. Johnson, is that what you expected?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, we have our revised corrective action plan in response to the comptroller's report and overnight field trip request.
I had a question about that. So it mentioned that the kids pay between $100 and $300, and there were fundraising opportunities. What happens if we have a kid that can't afford it?
They've been successful every year getting everybody to
So
go.
There's never.
No.
Okay, good.
Right. Mr. Belani, I haven't had a
Yes,
kid
true.
turned down, so.
Yes, we are fine.
Okay.
Mr. Campola would do another fundraiser.
Okay.
Yes, he would.
No, he would not.
We would try.
Well, then he can do it.
Bands are tapped.
They're done.
Yes, we know, we are actually even doing more fundraisers. It's $250, I believe, is the cost. So with all the fundraising, it's $250 for the parent. It was $700 last year and we didn't have a problem with it.
Okay.
So
Mrs. Battaglia, may I address the corrective action plan
Sure
just
can.
for the good of the board? So this corrective action plan is number 3 in response to our Office of the State Comptroller's audit. The State Comptroller's audit, the report, if you remember, there were a number of recommendations. In the report, they gave there's 2 sections of the report. They gave key findings and then they gave other recommendations. In the second corrective action plan that we gave to you about 2 or 3 months ago where you approved it, I addressed in my corrective action plan all of the recommendations. Turns out I got a phone call from this Office of the State Comptroller, and because I didn't list out each of the individual recommendations and address them individually rather than grouping them, we had to revise our corrective action plan. So it's nothing that, it's out of the ordinary. I think
we just wanted to call you again.
We've been best friends. We've done about 19 audits the last little while here, but I just want to allay any fears that it's nothing that has changed in our status. It's just how they wanted us to frame up our corrective action plan, to which I initially said, go pound salt.
No.
And then they said,
Play nice.
no, you really need to do this. I went, okay, I'll do it. I love them.
Thank you, Mr.
I love them. Love them. See you in another 5 years.
Thank you, Mr. Feldman. Then we have the course planning guide that we spoke about earlier and capital outlay project?
Yeah, we're holding on that, but we did get some information that we're gonna continue to do doors in the high school.
We're doing doors in the high school. We're gonna go down a different avenue this time around. Rather than bid the project, we're gonna do the project on state contract. So we found a vendor that will do we've not had an awful lot of luck in supply chains with bid projects, specifically with doors. So in working with Young and Wright, we found a vendor that will do this on state contract that has supplies readily available. So this kind of came out fairly quickly and materialized fairly quickly. So they were out this week, Monday, measuring doors. Then they'll send us a price and a quote on Thursday, and we'll have a recommendation to you in time for Tuesday night.
Wonderful, thank you. Any more questions about any of that? All right, informational items. Mr. Troll.
Earlier tonight, I attended the DEI Teaching and Learning Subcommittee meeting. We focused around conversations on improving and reviewing quantifiable steps for the strategic plan goals. We focused around our whole child goal tonight. A lot of great conversations came out of that meeting. And then this is a really busy time for our student government in the year. We have a lot of events and activities taking place before our winter recess that we're hoping to achieve. Our whole group met with Mr. Ryan, the building principal at Maplemere last week, Friday, to go over ideas for the Maplemere Leadership Celebration in February. We've decided on doing a theme of celebrating diversity through leadership and trying to tie that back into Habit 5, which is seek first to understand, then to be understood. In that process, I've asked our co-chairs of our Academics and Student Life Committee, Isabella Klein and Isabella Vega, to lead this initiative. And focusing on diversity, I've asked one of our co-chairs, Ariana Minhas, of our Diversity and Inclusion Committee, to assist in planning and developing the activities for that day. And then we are also planning soon a winter dance, spirit week, and pep rally for February. A lot of details on that still have to be worked out. I've asked our Chair of Student Wellness, Catherine Almodower, to take the lead in planning and organizing those events. And more in-depth planning for that is going to start probably early next week. And then our Food and Nutrition Committee and our Environmental Action Committee are meeting with Central Kitchen and Mississippi Jack on January 16th. We're hoping to continue conversations around more options for those with dietary restrictions, the Farm to Table grant program, and a few other ideas that they've been floating around this year. I'd like to thank both of those chairs, Matt Spence and Haley Starr, for all the hard work they've done to prepare for these meetings and advocating so passionately on behalf of our students. That's about it.
Ms. Jason?
Right, yeah, we had our health and safety meeting today. Mrs. Ballas always does a great job with it. Some of the highlights from that was we had two new student members from student government. We welcomed them aboard. It's so great to have the students there. They talked about the emergency drill status. We're right on track for our lockdown drills. They are trying to integrate Raptor and the emergency management system. There's still some tech areas still being worked on, correct? Touched on the parent safety forum. Talked about the threat assessment training. Erie County secured a grant with BOCES to do staff training, and that continues. Update on the capital project. The audit is open and they're starting to close out things. They still have to do the sidewalk to door 6.
Correct.
Is that, okay, but that can't happen until better weather, is that?
Correct.
And as you said, probably June.
June,
Okay.
when it stops snowing.
All right. Fire inspections, there were a couple issues. They cannot block the windows or over decorating of doors. Emergency remote instruction plans was reviewed, probably more to come. Yep. And then we reviewed New York State Department of Labor announced yesterday that we have to have a workplace violence prevention law, which is due on May 3rd, I believe. Yes. Our workplace prevention is due, our policy in place.
There's a number of steps.
Yes, to get there.
But ultimately, we're supposed to be in compliance by May.
Yeah, turnaround is pretty quick. So Joanne's going to get a committee together to see what that looks like for Sweet Home. And also, I just had a quick question. I know in the Buffalo News the other day, Williamsville has added 3 holidays.
Yep.
And I just wondered where we,
Yep.
thinking
So
of anything along those lines.
we're gonna convene the calendar committee soon. BOCES has released their calendar for the 2024-25 school year. The committee led by Mrs. Bayless will get together, kind of review that. We have not talked about adding holidays the way Williamsville has added them. I believe they're switching their staff report days still, they're making them into superintendent conference days.
Well, I wondered where they were coming from. how they
That's how they're doing it. So the staff is reporting on those days. It's just not a student day and they're turning them into conference days. So with that being said, though, I think next year we're in a good spot. It's the following year that's going to be very, very tight for all school districts around Western New York. And I sit on the JMT calendar committee and we're working on solutions now. But
Why the tightness for that particular
Labor Day is
year?
very late in that year. And I believe the rating day is early. So it's about as tight of a calendar as you can get. And with the added holidays, it's becoming more and more challenging for school districts. So we're working on it and, we'll keep you posted.
Okay, thank you. And that's all.
And can I just ask, because I read that article
Yeah.
too, and I mean, I think one is I did notice, they talked that it was superintendent. I don't know if I heard it from the article or was told by somebody else. Yeah, and I appreciate what they're trying to do, but it is a little bit, I think maybe could be misleading to the public, the way the article is written. But at the end of the day, I mean, we got to get a number, what is it, 180?
180.
So every holiday, there is this balance because I think it's important for parents to understand, while we do want to accommodate,
Yep.
it also could push the summer out,
It could. push this-
and so, I mean,
yeah.
and we've had that happen where sometimes, some of these days they're important to recognize. And as a result, though, the school year gets extended a day or two, or starts a day or two early.
Yeah, and you have to get them in. And so the requirement, we right now have 186 working teacher days, 182 student days. We're required by law to have 180 days of student attendance, but they also have to meet the hour requirements as well for instructional time. And they have to get in or else you don't get aid for those days. And so that's why, I'll put the Wednesday before Thanksgiving is a perfect example. We're not trying to be ogres, but we're trying, that day is just required and we have to, at times in certain years, in certain calendar years, have to be in session those days to meet that requirement.
And as Brian said, we're not being insensitive
No.
to people, we're respectful of days that people
Yes.
hold, dear to them. It's just our obligation is to make sure these kids are taught
Correct.
and we get our aid and we've
Yep.
got our days in.
So.
Okay, and that's it. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Mr. Johnson?
Sorry, I was on mute. This might be the shortest one ever. I attended the policy committee meeting. We talked about the policy stuff tonight. Thanks.
Wow, wow.
Wow. Thank you.
For once, you're not gonna make me look bad. Wow.
4 weeks.
It was the holidays.
Wow, that's true.
Ms. McDonald?
I also attended the Teaching and Learning Subcommittee of the DEI Committee. As Mr. Triloff said, it was a very productive meeting. Well done, team. Also, the Heritage Heights PTA meeting was tonight. It was postponed because of weather, or it was canceled because of weather. Their next meeting is going to be February 12th at 6:30. So I will see them there.
Great, thank you so much. Mr. Webb?
Yep, I also attended the Teaching and Learning Subcommittee, which we've talked about. I will add, we separated into groups, and one thing that came out of that because those meetings are, we're trying to accomplish a lot, but it kind of a piece that I wanted to mention or potentially get feedback from is the collection of information data from students. One of the things we're trying to look at is how do we measure and evaluate the whole student. And what the group I was working with, one of the things we're wondering is, do we capture data for students that are qualitative in nature? For instance, okay, these students were involved in athletics. These students in grade school were maybe on the Lighthouse team or the various groups, because I think the feeling in the group, the subgroup that I was with, was that because one of the pieces we were evaluating was attendance, and just how being part of these groups, we don't have the data. Well, it may exist. I don't know if it does, but like, you know, that the sense is that, at least from the teachers there, anecdotally, was, students that participate in athletics and different things, their attendance is, you know, higher. And I understand there's an element of maybe the chicken and the egg, but, you know, I can speak that on a personal level, I was UB when I was like 10 years old, asked me to be in a study. And every 3 years they've called me back. And to this day, I get a call, you know, every couple of years. And I wonder if that would, you know, I wonder if some of that information would be helpful, and maybe we are tracking it. But what I'm saying is the kids right now in grade school, some of the qualitative things that, and I don't even know if what we're allowed to capture, but just that we can then start to begin to see even better the programs in the things they're involved in that I guess would be extracurricular in nature. Like, do we track that anywhere? Do we have that information? Because I know we required, you know, testing data and attendance, but beyond that.
We have so many data points. It's all about how you put them together and cross-reference. So we can most certainly look at students who are participating in sports and
Or music or whatever.
or clubs.
Yeah.
And pull that data and look more closely at their performance academically. We have all that data available to us. It's all about how you ask the question. So today's session was about, like, what are those questions? That you want to ask to get to that data point that would help us really analyze how we're doing with the whole child. So it's good conversation.
Yeah, I just wonder, you know, in grade school, I mean, there's music, and, you know, maybe we find, hey, students that participate or one this is available to them, and then we have to ask, right? Like, you have to rent instruments. So is that something then maybe we find, well, that's an area we can help with, because it does lend itself to improved, you know, student attendance and performance and whatnot. And, you know, I know, again, rent, you know, you have to rent instruments in some cases. So I just want to make sure, or at least present it to the board and to the group here is something for consideration of, you know, thinking about what information are we collecting? How are we looking at it? And also give, I guess, some insight on to some of the discussion topics we're having in those meetings. But the other piece I just wanted to mention is I attended a basketball clinic put on by the Sweet Home basketball. Well, it's the basketball coach for the high school team and the varsity and junior varsity coach supervised, but actually the team ran the practices, and it was first grade through sixth grade this past Saturday, and it's going to continue for a few Saturdays for an hour. And it was really well done. But the two best pieces about it was, one, again, the diversity among the students, just from all backgrounds and age levels. And then the second piece was just the student athletes. I mean, how I think such a great job they did with the kids. You know, they were running the stretching drills, they were going through the practices and that. So I think it was really enjoyable for the kids, the younger students, to running the clinic. And so it was a nice event, and appreciate that.
It's always nice when the younger kids can see where they're going to be eventually. I think we've always said that about the music festival that we do, that we, you know, it's great for those younger kids to see what'll be going on in 12th grade. So, and that's one of the big benefits.
All right, Mr. Valani?
High school PTA is Thursday, so
There you
that's all I got.
Fantastic. And I
I will go this month.
appreciate you so much.
You're welcome.
And I don't have anything right now. That being said, that brings us to the next open session. Does anybody need to speak, want to speak before I read my whole big thing? Oh, all right. Just getting the lay of the land.
been to a lot of meetings.
Welcome.
I just do, I get some.
Here, come on up to the mic.
Street, this has been the longest time I've been quiet.
Do you want to read that first, Amy?
Sure.
She's got to read it first. It's official.
So
Go
as-
ahead.
As per Board Policy 1510, we hold 2 open sessions at each meeting. The second session may be used to address the board on topics appropriate for open session. The Board of Education recognizes the importance of maintaining an open dialogue with community members. In doing so, community members choosing to speak at the Board of Education meeting are bound by the terms outlined in this policy and must conduct themselves in a manner consistent with this policy, the district code of conduct, and all the laws and regulations that govern the operation of the Board of Ed. Speakers must be recognized by the presiding officer and announce their name, address, and if appropriate, group affiliation. Non-district residents must include the name of their business or how they do business with the Board of Education. Statements should be made to the board president, not individual board members. Participants may not discuss specific individuals or issues that fall under executive session. Speakers must be at least 16 years of age and are limited to 3 minutes each. Speakers may not transfer their time to another participant. The amount of time for each public participation period is 30 minutes.
My name is Sal Guadagna. I live at 269 Willow Green Drive. My daughter, my last one, is in 10th grade, and she's a lady wrestler, one of the first, and I couldn't be prouder. I thank you for the opportunity to talk a little bit. I didn't really prepare anything. I do have some concerns, and they're rangy. The main reason I came, I do have some concerns regarding some of the security at the school. Without going into too much detail, I was concerned about the metal detectors. I'll be frank here, the metal detectors and the weapon detectors. I come from a background of education. I've worked in 2 different systems where they were implemented, and to, I think, a good deal of success. One of the districts was North Tonawanda. The other one was Niagara Wheatfield. I know they're in different different counties, but they seem to do well there, and they're widely accepted, I think, by the teachers and the administrators. Could be wrong, but as far as I know, that's the impression I got. The other thing that I wanted to mention, I will be very happy to be part of the building,
The focus groups?
the focus group. Oh, yeah.
Great.
Dr. Janestri gave me an opportunity to speak today a little bit about my concerns, and it dovetails to security. My concern is, security. I really like thinking about that. I think the focus group can really peel back some layers and focus on what needs to be done structurally to some of these buildings to make them more compliant, as far as not compliant, maybe that's a bad word, but more fitting to more security, modern day security concerns. And so I'm getting close to my 3 minutes, I think. I was at a wrestling meet, and I didn't talk about this. I was at a wrestling meet, our wrestling meet, early this season, and I worked concessions. And I couldn't help but be overcome by the smell in the kitchen. Wow, that was very bad. It was horrid. Some of the maintenance staff put stuff down the drain. I noticed that that the steam tables drain directly into the floor drains. And I've worked enough in kitchens to know that if you have any amount of food in those steam tables, it goes directly down into your traps, down into that, and it rots. It smelled like a dead body, quite frankly. That was that. And I think that's it, really. Thank you, though, for letting me talk. Any questions about me? No.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And Dr. Janestri, I'm sure we'll be in touch.
You run a good meeting.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that very much. I don't get that often. All right, and with that, personnel, teaching and administrative and service will be voting on next week. If there's any questions or comments.
I do want to say just one thing, if Ms. Pataglia, if it's okay. You'll notice that the retirement of Tom Roberts is on the list. Tom has served the district for 25 years, and he's a joy to work with in our office, and his technical skills are like no other when it comes to data. Data is a tough job in any school district, and Tom has always done it with maximum effort and grace, and he's going to be a big loss for the district. I know all of us enjoy working with him so much, and he's got a long history here, and sad to see him go, but very, very happy for the next chapter for Tom. So
Thank you for that.
Yep.
Can I have a motion to adjourn to executive session for matters related to contract negotiations, employment history of a particular individual, student discipline, and legal matters? We will not be returning.
That's a long list.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Aye.
Aye.